All right, peeps, let's draw an eyeball. So there are a lot of different factors into drawing an eye, and there's a ton of different ways you can go about it, of course. But for this one, I'm going to go into the things that I think a lot of people overlook when they're drawing an eye. So for me personally, the first thing I always do when I'm drawing an eye is try to get the shape. Not of everything, but just how open is the eye itself. I think that shape is very, very important. And once I get that, I start going in. So for this one, I went straight in on one of the details I think is the most overlooked, and that is the tear duct. I think a lot of people draw eyes and they think about the iris and the pupil and all that good stuff, and they can get a lot of those details. But as soon as you take away that tear duct, or as soon as you put that tear duct in, it really applies a lot of the realism element to making an eye look lifelike, especially when you're creating those shadows, and you can start to get that little bit of light that's almost always reflecting on the tear duct, and then around it you have to get a very soft gray to create the softness of the tear duct. But you can't make it a super hard line either, because now it looks cartoonish and it's going to be too much. So the tear duct is a very small challenge I think a lot of people don't think about too much. Secondly, the part I'm working on right now is the darkness of the top of the eye. The top of the eye is always going to be darker, for one, because our eyelashes are thicker on top, but also because the shadow that the eyelashes almost always create. When you look at an eye up close, usually there's always a shadow from the eyelashes that actually reflect on the eyeball itself. So sometimes, like in this case, because we're doing a brown eye, so when that shadow hits the brown, it creates a very dark shadow. If it was a blue eye, that shadow would be a little bit lighter probably, so you would get to actually see the reflection of some of the eyelashes themselves, depending on the picture and how close you are to the eyeball. Just a little nerdy fact, of course. But now we're going into the outside of the pupil. Pupil, iris, I don't know, eye anatomy. But anyways, yeah, we're going in on this part, and I think this part is a lot of fun because it is very dark on the outside of the eye, and low-key, if you look at anybody's eye, even light-colored eyes, the outside of the eye is always a little bit darker than the inside of the eye. I'm not talking about the pupil, talking about the iris itself. The outside, as you go into the eye, it gets a little bit lighter, so you want to create those those dark shadows, and then as you're getting into the eye, create less and less pressure every now and then, periodically. And if you want to go into the pupil like I did, I went in on the pupil. I thought that was important because I wanted to create a very dark black. So now that I have my blackest of black, I can now create my other dark tones to compare to the black itself, to make sure that I'm matching the contrast that I need to match all around. So as I'm going back into the iris is always my favorite part to do. I really like the iris, and I think there are parts that people underestimate because I think it's very easy to start. Almost all of us see what I'm going to call wrinkles in the iris that create that texture, but I think a lot of times people start getting a little bit too consistent with them, and they start to kind of create a consistent pattern like it's sun rays or something, and we don't want to create something too consistent. Do some of them closer to each other, some of them a little further than each other. And on this picture in particular, as we get to the top left of the eye, you can't even really see them because the shadow is so dark. So I didn't really focus on doing them on the top left. I just wanted to make sure I got them on the bottom itself where that light is really hitting them. That way you can really see what we're doing. So I put a lot of time into the iris on this one in particular because this eye is like changing colors. Maybe this is an AI picture. I don't really know. I'm not about to go into all of that. All I know is that I really saw a challenge in how multicolored this eye was. Even though we're doing a black and gray version, the fact that it's going from that reddish brown tone to this yellowish tone and to that darker tone on the outside of the iris, I felt that was a good challenge to be able to create multiple different tones all in one iris. So again, layers. be really, really light, and then every now and then put just a little bit more pressure down. Really, really light, and then every now and then just a little bit more pressure when I'm doing those wrinkles, quote unquote, in the iris. But from the outside in, I'm doing, again, back to the sphere. I'm doing my round shape. As I'm on the outside, I'm darker pressure, but then I'm wisping it away as I get towards the inside. And I continue this motion over and over again. I'm just doing it quickly. And every now and then, if you want to add more contrast, instead of going from out to in, you can go around a little bit, just very, very lightly, so it doesn't get too dark, and you'll create more and more contrast. All right, now we're going into the light gray part of the eyeball, and a huge emphasis on ball. It is an eyeball. People think because our eyes are quote unquote white, the whites in our eyes, that it doesn't have any shading on it. But when you look closely, most eyeball pictures always have some areas that are gray and then some areas that are white. So I'm adding a super light gray, but in the top left, like where I'm at right now, it's really not that light. It's pretty dark gray, especially when you squint. When you squint, you let your eyelashes get real close together and you look, you can really see there's a lot more contrast in the top left picture of this eye than the bottom right. It's way darker in the top left than it is on the bottom right. Therefore, I add a little bit more and I keep going layer by layer by layer. Now I'm going back to the iris because there really is way more contrast in that outside of the iris that I need to add. When you look at the eyeball that I'm going off of versus the one that I have on my paper, there's way more contrast that needs to be added on the outside as it goes in. And the more I add that, the more it's going to give it that dimensional type multicolored effect, even if it's black and gray. Going back to the top part of the eye, back to the shadowy parts, and the eyelashes themselves, getting ready to start going on those. Another aspect that I think gets underestimated is the eyelash. With eyelashes, it's just like the iris. It's very easy to get into a pattern and start to do it consistently and to try to make sure that every single one looks the same. And you're going to lose a lifelike quality if you do that. When you're doing the eyelashes, you want to make sure some of them look a little bit longer. Some of them have two of them really close together. Some of them are a little bit thicker. Some of them are a little bit thinner. Some of them are lighter. As we get down to the bottom right of the eyelashes, they get lighter as we get close to the tear ducts. As we get to the top left, they're way, way thicker. So I'm going to put a lot more sauce on it as we're going towards the top left. We're going to add more of them because it's thicker over there. So we add more for texture. In the middle, it's a lot more skinny. Way skinnier, where the makeup really was showing, I suppose. Until I don't know, it's I'm a dude. But yeah, we continue to go in on these qualities. I'm definitely going to do a part 2 because this was a lot of fun. So I'm going to continue to attack and discuss some of the areas that we might really underestimate when we're drawing eyes. So I'll do the eyebrow just to do a little beginner hair tutorial. I'll do the eyebrow. I'll do the bags under our eyes, which I think are important. Whether it's a pretty woman eyeball, there's still bags under the eyes. And even as we look again real quick at the eyeball itself, we think it's white, but when you look at it, I think the eyeball on this picture is darker than the top of her eyelid. I think the white hitting that eyelid is brighter than the eyeball itself, which shows that you need some light gray. Get at the tip of that pen or pencil or tattoo machine and go really, really light. But that gray is super important to add on that eyeball. And there's a lot of little things like the eyelashes and the tear duct and not being so dark with it and continuing to build. As you continue to build that contrast slowly, you continue to get a super dope product. So take your time with it, don't rush, and remember it's the little things that really make a huge result in the end of it. So appreciate you. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff.